Good morning. Welcome to West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. My name is Reverend Clyde Goings. I'm the assistant minister here, and I want to welcome you on this beautiful Sunday morning. And I am really glad that you chose to spend your time with us this morning. So I don't forget, the thrift store is open today. I got in trouble last week from Mary, so I don't want to get in trouble again. All right, so we come together every Sunday to shop in the thrift store. And to know our and to know our spiritual truth, that we're whole, perfect, and complete just the way that we are. So knowing this truth, we celebrate that every Sunday, and we just take that out into the world and anchor ourselves in this truth. And we bless what's going on in Ukraine right now, knowing that they are making it through it, and we are supporting them in a loving way. So I want to remind everybody that, not everybody, I want to remind the men that we are having our men's retreat this weekend. It's Friday night and Saturday. You sign up in the bookstore. If you have any questions, you can come and see me or see John. John is my marketing person for this, and he's doing a really good job. So it'll be a really great event Friday night and Saturday. The theme is anchoring in the spiritual truth. Also, Reverend Karen's class has started. It started on Thursday. Hint, hint, hint. And that's exactly what I was going to say. So, but the other thing that I would say is that, so all of us go through changes, and Reverend Karen has gone through a lot of changes. And so she's doing the foundations class in a new way with a new consciousness. So it's a great time to join her in that experience. So, and I love the class. I've taken the class 3 different times. I always tell people there's a lot to learn, and if you're ready to change your life, that's when you'll definitely changes in that foundation class. All right, so let's say our vision statement together so we can open up the service. We are a loving, joy-filled community honoring the many paths to God as we learn and live the science of mind principles. And so it is. So just sit back, open up your hearts and minds for the Bradford's beautiful music and Reverend Karen's beautiful message. Thank you.
So just take a deep breath.
I will make a quiet place within my heart, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my mind, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my life, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord. I will make a quiet place.
as we just calm our minds and open our hearts, making that quiet place. We feel the vibration of this building, of the presence of God, the love that we truly are, as we let go of any false identities, as Ernest Holmes would say, the obliterated the false idea. We recognize our truth, that we are truth, and that truth is love expressed divinely through your human beingness on each and every day. And as we celebrate that with our hearts, we can feel our souls jumping, hollering, wanting to have a hootenanny about the truth of life and love. And that Reverend Karen embodies this truth. The Spirit has given her this gift to speak these words of wisdom into our hearts so that we may shatter the false identities of the mind and step into who we truly are, releasing any concepts that have been laid upon us. That total acceptance of the reality of your identity and your body and your beingness on this planet is truly the authentic place. That the Bradfords sing the songs of love to settle our minds and open our hearts and release the vibration of love, for music truly is the music of the soul. And with these words, I know that the divine Spirit has given them because they have touched us in a way like no other words have touched before. And they are perfect and they are complete. And I set them free into the law, knowing that they will land perfectly as they shall be. And so it is. Today, I am reading from Tattoos of the Heart, The Whole Language, The Power of Extravagant Tenderness by Gregory Boyle. This is a beautiful book, highly recommended. Greg Boyle runs Homeboy Industries, and he helps folks coming out of prison, and he has such words of graciousness that we could use in each of our everyday relationships. He says something happens when modifying our behavior. Something happens when modifying our behaviors ceases to be the first priority. Mystical love accepts with peace and isn't on the hunt for things to criticize. The Geiger counter of our heart, seeking love, has no interest in the weakness and shortcomings or what we need, only light and strength. It is our practice at Homeboy to do this in a way that honors every person. Since God persists in love, no matter how dark things get, God is not preoccupied or enfeebled by our sin. There is no sin. This is true because God doesn't see sin but wholeness. God sees right through it, right through the heart of things. And so it is.
In this moment, in this place, I remember who I am, letting fear and worry fall away from me. I open my eyes and see there is only love. There is only love, love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. When I lose myself, when it seems I've lost my way, when I go inside and quiet my mind, I can hear Spirit gently say, There is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love.
Somebody requested that song last week. I can't remember who it was, but somebody.
One of our good friends.
Oh, did he do okay? Wonderful, good. It was beautiful. Yeah, we haven't heard that in a while. Thank you. It's so good to see you. Good morning. Good morning. The room is nice and full this morning. It's good to see you. It's so wonderful to sit together in community. It's so wonderful to come together and to remember that we're blessed and we're inspired and we're grateful for all that is, and that's the way that we can be big for God. And so thank you for joining me, and welcome everybody at home. It's good to have you joining us from afar, and what a wonderful thing it is to play with your imagination and just imagine how many people might really be participating right now beyond the walls of this room, beyond the sanctuary. I love that idea. The title of my talk today is 24/7, and it's a message that I've been wanting to deliver for a little while. I have this idea that I wanted to talk today about the sort of universal availability of God and the universal availability of good in our lives. And it seems that what we know is that the more we address it, the more we open ourselves to the possibility of having experiences of good and of God in our everyday living, that the more ready we become to recognize that magnificent presence of God absolutely everywhere. So I loved your reading. I loved the prayer. Even in the prayer, you were speaking the words of the message this morning. Thank you, Tracy. I am grateful for this opportunity for us to really look at that ever-present essence of truth, of love and of joy and of goodness in every way in our lives. I believe that idea of the allness of God, or the everywhereness of God, and the alwaysness of God, also known as omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. Omniscient is the all-knowing. That's the infinite intelligence that we talk about. And those are sort of universal principles. But I love that this is a truth that we can embody. This is the simplest kind of conversation we could have to get us anchored back in a movement, a flow with the universe that is will work positively in our lives. It will show up immediately. So what I want to say this morning is something you can take home and use and apply in a really practical way in your life immediately. I love these types of conversation because that 24/7, that idea of the allness and the way that God is always present everywhere, this is a truth that carries me through my dark nights of the soul, that carries me into my sweet dreams at night before I close my eyes in slumber. This is the same essence of truth that kicks off my day every morning, and it can be for all of us. And the more we use it, the more we will recognize that presence of God in our lives. Here's the quote that I took from the book, a book by Reverend Jesse Jennings, who is a Science of Mind minister with Centers for Spiritual Living. He wrote or compiled this fabulous book called The Essential Ernest. So these are actually the words of Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of our teaching. Holmes said, as intelligent observers, he's talking about us, as intelligent observers, we must realize that God is a universal presence. God is a neutral force, a divine and impartial giver, forever pouring himself upon creation. Now that's two or three things to think about right there. Those are interesting ways of defining what God is. I like that. That quote itself is if you're me, that's sort of a delicious concept to tuck in your mind and lean into. But we are intelligent observers. See, when we're observing, we're paying attention. We're having an attentiveness towards life. And I love, there's a line in the Course in Miracles that says, all it takes is the tiniest piece of willingness, and then bam, the fullness of spirit is your reality. And so, as intelligence observers, we get it. God is a universal presence. We say that simple things like, there is no place where God is not. Right where I am is the full presence of God, right here, right now. And we try and keep it in a way that we can relate to it so it has kind of an immediacy to it. But then he goes on to say that it's a neutral force. Now, we often talk about God as a benevolent, as a force for good, as a force for, there's a power and a presence, Holmes would say, and it is a power for good, and we can use it. And so that is the core of a new thought, an idea in this new thought teaching, that God is this force, but he uses words like neutral and impartial. And that is a unique discipline to look at. Because I think it really helps me when I realize when we talk about God being neutral or impartial, there's a concept of God, what sometimes we call it principle or the way spiritual laws work, that is neutral and impartial in that it does not answer Tracy Herrick's prayers better than it answers my prayers, nor the other way around, right? It meets us exactly where we are. It's a force for good, and it's neutral in as much as it doesn't care what we pray for or don't pray for. It doesn't care how much we're open to receive our good, but it can only give us as much as we can receive. So there's a place where we come to understand that we have a position in this relationship with Spirit, and it's up to us to choose how much good can we receive, how much good can you tolerate? Maybe we're so used to the opposite that's an intriguing question. I notice that the people that dedicate themselves to being aware and awake and participating in the spiritual aspect of living, those seem to be the people that have the best understanding that life on this planet, life in this form, well, you have your own form, you don't have this form, but life on the planet in this way that we come in physical form is always changing. And so many of the great thinkers, beginning with, for Ernest Holmes, it would have began with Ralph Waldo Emerson. So many of the great thinkers suggested that if we observe nature, if we really pay attention to what's going on in life, we can learn skills. We can increase the size of our tool bag as to how we respond to life, because life happens. Things happen in life that, and that's what spirituality is about. It's equipping us to be able to move with the way that life changes and things have to readjust. So if you look at like a storm that blows through your town, things can be damaged, but there's a way that nature restores herself. And it doesn't take very long. A couple years back, Hugh and I took a vacation to Key Largo, and we met some friends and family in Key Largo. But after we booked our trip and we were planning this great vacation for January, there was a big hurricane. You might remember her, Irma. Hey, Reverend Clyde, where are you, Reverend Clyde? Oh, never mind. I'll talk to you later. Love it when you accidentally out somebody. It's so good. He did tell me he was really tired. Do you think he's taking a nap? Possibly. Sorry, I love you. But Reverend Clyde's sister lost her home, and I think it might have been the same hurricane. Which, oh, okay. I think this was Irma. Irma came after that one. That's right. That's what happened. They got hit with 2 or 3. There he is. Hey, what storm was your sister in, Reverend Clyde? Houston. So she totally lost everything. Reverend Clyde called me and said, oh my God, I'm freaking out here. My sister said there's water coming in her front door. It's up to their ankles. I had just been watching the news. He calls me back in like 10 minutes. Oh my God, she called again. The water is up to their knees now. And I'm going, get out of the house, because I had just seen all this news where people were getting trapped in their attics. And sure enough, they got out of the house. And I said, tell her not to go upstairs. Don't go in the attic without an axe. Does she have an axe? Get an axe. I was all worried about it. It was high drama because it was real. It was happening as we were talking, and we did beautiful. We took up a collection for her, but she lost everything. She was sick about this quilt she had made, and so anyhow, that same storm front that was a different hurricane hit in the Florida Keys. As you may recall, they got hit quite hard. And then we show up in January, and all the tourists, you made the phone calls, should we travel or should we not travel? And they said, please come. Please, we need that. We have lost so much of our income because of nobody's traveling. So please come. So it was several months after the hurricane. And there was evidence of that hurricane everywhere. And in spite of the piles of rubble that were on the side of the road, and they were probably, there may still be some piles of rubble, I don't know, because it takes a long time for them to get the trucks down that single road from the Keys and all the way back up to wherever they take rubble. I don't even really know. So there were these piles of rubble. It was surreal because it was so beautiful. So you have this gorgeous sort of tropical Florida. You know what's so fun about the Keys is you got the Atlantic. There are some places where you can stop your car on the road and the Atlantic Ocean is there and the Gulf of Mexico is there and you can see them both at the same time. In fact, it feels like you're almost low. It almost feels a little risky. So what I can tell you, and what you know already, is that after nature has a catastrophe, she immediately starts repairing herself, and she's pretty speedy about it too. And this is just a really good example for us to see that something in us, that divinity, that infinite intelligence that's in all of everything and every living thing, it has something in it that understands that allness 24/7 all the time, that there's that call to grow and to be resilient and to recover from things. So I think that there definitely are individuals who have a sort of an openness to recognize how miraculous life is. Right? There just are some individuals, and there always have been individuals like that throughout history. We can see it in the writings of the prophets and the Psalms, and we can see it in the great poetry and the mystics that left recorded works for us that we can read and study and have sort of those close encounters with the divine as we're having that experience of reading somebody else's experience. But there are always those individuals who have that ability to perceive the presence of God right before them. Maybe not 24/7, but the presence is there 24/7. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. I brought with me I might have quoted from this book last week, I can't recall, but I'm reading from the seminar lectures by Dr. Ernest Holmes, and it's this particular book is totally out of print, but wow, I love some of the obscure writings, and these are recorded, transcribed. This was, all of these lectures were given at a spiritual retreat in 1953 in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California in a summer retreat. And somebody recorded them and typed them all up and put them in this book. And so there are some really profound things. A lot of it makes me laugh because you can hear his personality and how he was so brazen. He would just say whatever came to him. And he didn't write a talk like a minister might prepare a message. He would have an idea what he was going to do, but what he said he did was that he would go out and mingle with the people as they were gathering before a lecture, and he would look to see what the people were ready to hear. Isn't that an interesting? I'm telling you, I wouldn't know how to do that. I can write a message, but I wouldn't know how to do that. So I wanted to read you a little bit of what he had to say about those great thinkers that he called mystics. And I also am reading this because he named some people that he said to us in this lecture and in this written word now that we should be reading. These are the people that he read and believed contributed to New Thought as much as anybody. And so Holmes said this. He's telling us that through history, there were great thinkers that all had the same message. And he begins by saying, mysticism is not psychism. This is one of the things we talk about in the early teachings of the foundation class, which, by the way, is still open on Thursdays from 2 to 4. He says, mysticism is not psychism, and it's not a mystery. I know it's a bit confusing, but New Thought, all of New Thought is considered, we are all considered mystics, that our faith is a mystical faith. And the reason for that is that we align to that idea of oneness, that we emphasize the wholeness of the everything connected in the universe. And that's what makes it mysticism. But it's not the same as going to having a reading done by cards or having your palm read or tea leaves. Many psychics are very, very gifted, but they're not mystics. So he always was strong in that. That was important to him. So he starts naming people, and he begins with Dr. Richard Maurice Buck. Now, does that sound familiar? Some people know him. Buck is famous for the book called Cosmic Consciousness. And why? Oh, there he is. I didn't want to call you out in case you were sleeping in the other room or something. But while I was away, Reverend Clyde gave a whole talk based on, he was reading that particular book. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Reverend Clyde, you read somewhere in Holmes' writings that he recommended we read Richard Maurice Buck. So Clyde did. He's a good student, right? So Holmes says, Dr. Buck defines mysticism as the direct perception of truth. Intuition, see, what the psychic is not intuiting. The psychic is actually reading the atmosphere of your thought. It's a very skilled gift. For some people are really good at it. He says it's the direct perception of truth without intellectual manipulations. I'm sure there's a whole story behind that line. But we go through a process of reasoning to arrive at that which does not reason. Then he goes on to say, here are the people you should be reading. Do you want to know who he thought we should be reading? So this is really fun if you're a minister or a practitioner, you're excited about this. He mentions first Meister Eckhart, St. Augustine, St. Teresa, Evelyn Underhill, Walt Whitman, Kipling, Wordsworth, and Robert Browning. Why? Because they are speaking the language, not of the unknowable, but of the unknown that we can know if we take time to study and to commune. And I mean, some of the Robert Browning, I've loved Robert Browning since I was taking literature in high school. And now I understand why, because there is the deep spiritual roots that Holmes is telling us are the universal roots of mysticism. And then he goes on to say something about this. This is a cosmic experience, not a psychic experience. It is a cosmic experience that comes to redeem us from our own theology. So you have a theology, and I have a theology. I taught a class a few years ago, creating your personal theology. Because if you're going to have a theology, you might as well be aware that you're walking around with some beliefs about God and about the universe. And as Albert Einstein said, you know, whatever you believe about the universe is going to show up in your life. You know, if you don't think this is a friendly place to live, you're going to be walking around guarding yourself and protecting yourself and not able to see how quickly nature recovers from a hurricane and worse. So, and then he went on to name some of the philosophers, Plotinus, Spinoza, and he includes Jesus, and the list is long, and I love knowing those things. Those were all people who recognized the miraculous nature of life. 24/7, they recognized there was this opportunity to bump into God in the least expected moments, and it doesn't even have to be God. You name it whatever you want. I think the only difference between most of us and a really pure mystic is how attentive they are and open to spiritual ideas. And, to add to that, all of us are moving through life and we bump into situations and experiences. I have been through a pretty big experience in my life, and the loss of my husband of 50 years has been a traumatic something big that I had to overcome. But here's what I can tell you. It's like, and I've mentioned this before, that it was hard to pray in those early days when the grief was so much more intense than I imagined, because you can't know. But there are things that happen to us that can cause us to lose our vision for a while. There are things that happen in our lives, our experiences, that may even give you a little bit of amnesia so that you don't remember those core truths in any specific moment. But they are holding you up even though you can't remember it. Because as we study and learn and reason on these things, our consciousness changes shape. We're not the same people that we used to be. And so that consciousness is the very thing that carries you through, even when you think that you can't get through it. There's something of substance that is there. So I was thinking about it as I was writing this material, that in many ways, the widow's veil, the shroud of I love in Western movies where the women will wear, or in Gone with the Wind, the widow wears this long black thing and she's supposed to be in it for a year, I ain't doing that, honey, I'm sorry. But I love you about it. But what... I'm rising out of those ashes, baby. I'm the phoenix rising, man. This is a great time. Right. I mean, there's no question. It's what we do. It's what the lesson is, and we all have to go through it. I kept arguing with Clyde. I kept saying, Reverend, you got to help me here. I don't understand. The God of my belief would have figured out a better exit plan. Why does one of you got to die first? It doesn't make any sense. And Clyde would just look at me like, really, how do you still love me? I don't know, but I'm okay now. I figured it out. I got it all. I know the secret answer if you need it for a price. I might share. But anyhow, the grief of the widow's veil, that's what it felt like. It felt like I was living in the widow's veil, and it's dark, and you can't see through it very well. And that's okay, because it kind of kept me safe while I was healing. So think of it. If you break an arm or a leg, you're going to be uncomfortable for a while. You're going to be broken. And in the case of a loss, you are broken open. But you're going to heal. You have every 24/7, there's a healing agent. There's a movement of love. And you are going to heal, whether it is a broken bone or a broken heart, that there is a way that Spirit itself knits us together. Right? And then we come back. We rise out of the ashes, and most of the time, we are better than we were before. Holmes worded it this way. Dr. Holmes said, our thoughts always begin with our experiences. So the experience of loss for me was like living under the shroud, living behind that until, and just by letting the days pass and doing the things that were before me, suddenly it all changed. It was like there was light again, and that's just the way life is. You know, did you ever find yourself, think back in all your life, the times where you found yourself in debt and you thought, oh my goodness, how will I ever get out of this? And then a year passes and you're out of debt and you didn't do a thing? You didn't do a thing. You just keep showing up and you do your due diligence, and before you know it, you've recovered. And that's why they call bankruptcy forgiveness. You know, there's just that healing process in life. So our thoughts begin with our experiences, so Dr. Holmes says, and we can learn to train ourselves to choose our thoughts, right? We choose our thoughts. We redirect where the direction we're going, so we don't have to go deeper and deeper into the pit. The moment of recognizing that there is light, that there is love, that there is goodness 24/7, whether or not I see it, that's when the healing starts to reveal itself. Because, you know, we also say there's nothing to be healed, only wholeness to be revealed. Does that make sense? I mean, now you can feel that in the context of the story. So let me give you one more story, because this is good. This week, my youngest of my 10 grandchildren, my youngest grandchild is 9 years old now. Now, I have, if you've been to my house, I have the most magnificent grandma swing set in my backyard, probably better than any other grandparents here or online. I have a pretty cool, comparable to the one you turned into a chicken coop recently when your kids grew up. So I got this, I inherited the swing set. I bought the house when I moved here, but my daughter lived there for the first 3 years. And then when she moved, we moved into the house that was ours. She left the swing set. Now, my granddaughter was too little to really know it was hers. She just thinks Grandma always had a swing set for her. So every time she comes over, for her entire life now, she comes over and she goes out and she plays on the swing set. So she runs out, and it brings her great joy. You can hear her singing, and she loves that. And all of a sudden, I remembered that I had not cleaned up after the dog for a couple days, and she's out there running around, and I'm thinking like, oh, this could be bad. So I head for the door to save her from what could be horrible in my grandmother's opinion. And just as she's squealing and running in the house, and she says, a spider web was on the swing. So here's what happened. I have this magnificent swing set in the backyard that brings her great joy. It brings me great joy to hear her having great joy in the backyard. Her fear of the spider not only diminished her joy, it like disappeared completely. And my fear of her stepping in something she shouldn't step in diminished my joy of her being out there on the swing set. And here's what I realized when all this happened. It's better than, it is a little Forrest Gumpy, like dog poop happens, kind of. But what I realized is that our sense of joy decreases whenever we're in fear. Our sense of joy decreases whenever we have something in our face that doesn't feel right. Worry takes it away. Any kind of concern, even if it's a concern for somebody else that you love, it diminishes our ability to recognize the presence of God 24/7 exactly when we need to recognize it the most, when it would do us the most benefit. So, the iron, it's a beautiful story because if you think about it, the swing set was there the whole time, undisturbed. The potential for joy was right there in front of us, but we couldn't see it, back under the dark shroud. And, That's what we're talking about today. Joy, goodness, pleasure, beauty, all of it, no matter what's going on in the world. You know, in the Ukraine, they still have beautiful sunsets even now, right? So God is right there, and it's so valuable for those of us who are not directly impacted to be holding that space in consciousness for the kind of peace that we know passes our understanding. It is a divine peace, and we know it's possible. So we are resilient. God doesn't bring our trials. We are intelligent observers. Holmes, I love that. We go back to that quote at the top. We are intelligent observers, realizing a universal presence that's everywhere. It's all the time everywhere. And the more we recognize it, the more we use it, the more we see it, the more we talk about it, that then it deepens our faith, and we can trust in it no matter what we're going through, no matter what reason we may be wearing a shroud. Life happens. So we are living our lives when we're aware of the presence of God. That's when we can say we live and move and have our being in Spirit itself. When we are in that flow, that divine flow, then when the tides of life, just like the ocean, there's an ebb and a flow. When we're doing that dance of life consciously, we can keep moving. You know, if you find, if you're at the ocean's edge and you find a bluff that is not open to public access, where you kind of have to climb down the bluff to get down there, oh, that's my favorite kind of beach going. I like climbing down those. I prefer going up. Down scares me a little bit, but I love that, where there's no footprints, and that you never know what you're going to find in the sand. But you have to be aware of the ebb and the flow of the tide. So if I go down the bluff and I go out on the rocks because the tide is way out, and I'm looking at the tide pools, and I get really excited about a starfish or dozens of other possibilities, and the tide comes back in, you can get marooned. You know, there's actually a word for it. I tried to research it. I couldn't quite pull it up, but you can get yourself marooned out there. So if I'm really having a good time and I don't pay attention, then I could have to go through the water to get back to the bluffs to climb up and get to safe ground again. But you don't get marooned because God's punishing you. You don't get marooned because something in the heavens is playing a funny joke. The trickster is out there playing a funny joke on you. There are, things that happen. It is our inexperience. It is our lack of understanding that there's a high tide and a low tide, and a time when it's safe to go down, and a time where you're taking a little more risk. And we also are distracted. And that happens all the time in our lives. The only time that, it's 24/7, that presence is there. But we're distracted with the details of living. Sometimes we're having a good time, like watching the starfish. And sometimes it's because of our lack of experience. We don't have the knowledge that would help us prepare for such events. So that's what Dr. Holmes meant when he said to us, your ignorance to the way the law works, your lack of knowledge, right? Our ignorance to the way spiritual laws work does not protect us from the consequences. And that's why we come together. That's why we can say the same things, over and over, and we can teach the same classes. And you can, by the way, you should, Reverend Clyde, not be bragging that you took it 3 times. That's not really very impressive to me. We have congregants that could double your record. So you need to either start fibbing a little bit or get your butt back in class. So we study spiritual matters because we know when we know more, when we have more information, when we know better, we do better, right? And when I learn that about me, then I can be more forgiving to other people, you know? So if like a family member hurt your feelings or something, if I know that I do better when I know better, you know, the more I know, the better choices I make, then I can extend that to the people that I care about or the people that, anybody, to even a stranger. We don't know what's going on in somebody else's life. So we go through our life and we gather wisdom, and you might say that the times we are living in right now, this is, there seems to me, from this minister's perspective, there seems to be a tide of opportunity unfolding for all of humanity right now. And in the same way that we say God created the heavens and the earth, we can know also that in that natural act of creation, that we live in a universe that is for us, and that everything we need to survive or everything is given. Right? We are fully sustained in this experience of being human and living on the planet. So at this time, and I want to quote from actually I'm not sure he had a doctorate. I want to quote from Wallace Wattles. Who all remembers Wallace Wattles from he's an early metaphysician. Actually, he lived the very same lifespan about the same years as Dr. Ernest Holmes, very similar. Wallace Wattles said it in a beautiful way. His book is The Science of Well-Being. That's the book that I like the best. And he spoke that when the needs of the whole human race come together at the same time, those needs will stimulate an evolutionary change. And so I want to remind you that something is happening on the planet, that something new is trying to emerge. We already see we can't go back to things the way they were. We are now preparing the space for holy newness. And I love thinking about that around Easter time, because that's what the image of the resurrection is all about, that idea. So it can look chaotic, but it's a process. It is chaotic because it's change, and change comes in an evolutionary way. In biology, they would say it's when any ecosystem becomes too complex. We've become a little complex. Right? Then change has to happen, and there's a natural evolution in that. So Wallace Wattles said this. This is a fabulous quote. The entire universe is made out of original substance. It is the formless stuff. Here's what makes me laugh. The formless stuff, capital F, capital S. We have a new name for God, the formless stuff, which fits with my image of what the infinite intelligence that created all of life is. It's created out of formless stuff, all capitalized. And there's no limit to this formless stuff. The space in it and through it and between all the forms, the space of what you can see that's visible, the space is permeated with the raw material of all things. It's that original substance. And that raw material can never be exhausted. That formless stuff responds to the needs of humanity. Let us never forget that. Life responds to our needs. Right where you are, there is the guidance, there is the love, there is the support, there is the protection. Right where you are, 24/7, all the time. And so in the language of Wallace Wattles, he says, that stuff, capital S, is intelligence. That is the stuff that thinks. It is alive. It is always impelled toward more life. This is a beautiful language to my heart. You know, piggybacking on the book you quoted from. That is the infinite intelligence that I know I live and move and have my being in, and so do you. So I'll close this morning with very sweet and favorite quote of mine from Dr. Holmes, where he said, "We are saturated with divinity, we are immersed in reality, and we are filled with possibility." Whew, take a breath. We're going to pray on that. Whoa, that was a lot. Yeah, just breathe. Breathe into this very moment. And we just sit in the stillness for a while as we turn within and recognize just the truth in the beautiful words that God is right here. Spirit itself right here in this very room, deep at the core of our being, wherever we may be resting right now. I feel the love of God, and I know it is the activity of life. So we breathe, for the breath is that aliveness. We have been kissed by the Spirit itself, that breath of life that has called us into being, so that we might show up as individualized expressions of Spirit itself. We are created from that formless stuff that is the wisdom, the intelligence of all creation. It is the very thing that creates that perfect order in this universe, so everything is perfectly aligned to everything else. So we just feel that love of God. We feel it within us so that we recognize we are blessed. We are inspired by that breath of life, and we are grateful. What a gorgeous way to walk our life and to be big for God, to raise our heads in the glory that God has created us to be. So we open ourselves to be vessels, and we recognize that in that formless stuff that we are made of, there is the divine DNA. We are children of God, created in the image and likeness of Spirit itself. So I feel that love of God. I know it as that creative activity of life expressing itself through me and through all of us. It is the way in which we open ourselves to be vessels to receive. So whatever may be going on in our lives, whatever shroud may have confused our vision, we lift the veil and we allow ourselves to see with that divine clarity that everything is in perfect order regardless of the appearances. We align ourselves to the words of Jesus, the master teacher, and we do not judge by what we think we see going on in our lives or in the world. We know that God is absolutely and fully present everywhere, right now and at all times. And so I feel this sense of contentment wash over me, for I know that it is the propellant of love that is pure God, that it is cleansing, that it cleanses, it clears our vision so that there is this divine clarity in which we move through our lives. And anything which seems to be ailing our physical being is healed in this very moment. And so we easily and effortlessly know that there is healing going on, because this day a profound truth has been revealed, and we have a greater glimpse of our very own wholeness, as well as the perfection and wholeness in the lives of our loved ones. There is no place where God is not, so we can be confident that There is that healing salve, that agent of life, that insistence on the part of life for the continuance and the complete recovery and rehabilitation, not only of the physical body, but of the planet itself. That we are restored to peace, that the joy we desire is given, that the grace of God is fully and openly received, and all we need do is create the tiniest place of willingness. And so I say thank you, God. Thank you, life. Thank you, infinite Spirit. How grateful we are. How good it is to know that right where we are, there is that perfection, desiring expression in our very own lives. And so with a heart overflowing with good, I simply release the words of this prayer into that impartial, that impersonal law that only says, yes, my child, yes, we let it be, and together we say, and so it is. Amen. Amen.
Grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. Everywhere I look and every face I see, His love reflected shining back to me. I just give thanks for all these simple things, the joy and peace that gratitude brings. That's why I'm grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have.
All right. Thank you, Bradfords. You know, I was sitting back there, and we talked about this. Karen and I went over to the Bradford's house a couple weeks ago to look at the chickens and the ducks and the bees and the frogs and the rabbits and the. They have a whole zoo out there. But anyways, we were talking about putting an image up on the screen. Isn't this beautiful flower? I mean, I was looking back then. It's just really beautiful. So, yes, Kendra, our wonderful, amazing Kendra, who does everything. She found that for us. So thank you, Kendra. I just wanted to show that I really do appreciate that. It was beautiful. So now is the time to celebrate our abundance. And I just want to remind us some quick reminders. One is that we're not passing around the offering plate. So remember that we have drop boxes in the back of the room and also in the bookstore area. So you can drop off your tithe there. We really appreciate it. Also want to remind you that if you're not signed up or have us signed up as a donor for Fry's, if you shop at Fry's, if you could sign up for that, we have information about that. I can give that to you. So come and see me, so we can sign up. And the reason why I brought that up is we just received $51 from them this month, and it's free money, right? As you guys do the shopping, we get the money, so it works really, really well. They get a lot of my money because I do shopping all the time for Fry's. But then also the same thing with Amazon. Amazon, if you're shopping on Amazon, you can sign us up as a recipient of the money, and we will get that money as well, and we get that quarterly as well. So, and then one last thing is that we've got the online pledge program where you can sign up and have an automatic draft that comes in, so that way you don't have to worry about coming in on Sunday to give us the money. You can just let it come in straight out of your check. So we got all kinds of ways to receive money. That's why we're talking about abundance right now. So anyway, now is the time to celebrate the abundance of our lives. So we'll say our giving affirmation together. I live in a consciousness of good. Divine love blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God, and so it is.
Please rise for our last song. thinking about my problems. I'm living now. I'm living now. And I ain't gonna worry about the future. I'm living now. I'm living now. So put your hands up if you feel like having a good time. Put your hands up if you're sharing love with all. Raise your cup if you're hopeful for tomorrow. Put your hands up if you're ready to have some fun. And sing it. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. Oh, oh, it feels so good to be alive. One more time. Oh, it feels so good to be alive.
Oh, I'm so happy you were all here today. If you're watching from home, remember you can get details about everything that's happening at our center at our webpage, wvcsl.com. Easy to find. So let's close with an affirmation. Repeat after me. Something wonderful is happening through me right now.
Something wonderful is happening through me right now.
It is this thing called life. 24/7. Every day. And I accept. Amen. Have a blessed week. Remember, pray often and love much.